right, 30 minutes past the hour, live from Studio 6B on a Thursday night. Real America's Voice all across the country, 103.9 LI News Radio, Suffolk County, Long Island on your radio. Glad you're all in. Slick's going to get some more sports in. Delgado's going to get some more news, along with Vinnie Mac, Aaron and Fran holding it down. Harry on the highways in the building as well. And, of course, you, the live from Studio 6B audience, wherever you're watching. YouTube, X, Rumble, Facebook, Getter, Kick, wherever I'm missing. We appreciate all of you giving us a few hours of your weekday nights, 8 to 10, right here on Real America's Voice, like I said. Please welcome back to the show, Editor-in-Chief over at AMAC Newsline. That's Shane Harris. Shane, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you on. Delgado did this in our news in the first hour, the Supreme Court ruling upholding Tennessee's ban on transgender drugs and surgeries for minors. Tell me about this court ruling and what do you think it means, not only to the broader cultural perspective, compared to obviously where we were. I've been saying for a long time this is an issue that we are absolutely winning big time on. Now you have this ruling. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so it's a great ruling, obviously a great win for parents, a great win for kids. And the important thing, I think, is that this has implications far beyond Tennessee. There's about half the states that have passed laws that are similar to Tennessee's. And so this clears a way for all of those to go into effect. And one of the really interesting things, I think, about this ruling and this whole issue in general is where this started. And, you know, I think that sports actually played a very big role in this, because if you go back, if you look at the history of this issue, where I really think the tide turned and where we started winning on this issue, where conservatives started winning, was on the sports issue. When you have men competing in women's sports, and it's a very public thing, it kind of exposes how ridiculous the whole movement is. And so everything I see is kind of being downhill from that. Once everybody kind of got on board and said, oh, yeah, this is ridiculous. We can't have grown men competing against women in sports. You know, the whole narrative starts to unravel a little bit. And I think that really led to this ruling.
Yeah. I think some of the other work that some of these other groups have done, conservative groups, I know the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh, those guys did a big undercover over at one of the hospitals in Nashville, taking on this issue and showing some of the stuff that was going on there as well. So there's been a lot of it, but I think you're right. We've been winning on this issue for a while. Is there anything else about the ruling that kind of like jumped out at you or stuck with you about it?
Yeah, no, it's interesting where I think it really highlighted the divide that's going on in the country was also reflected in the justices. So there was a 6-3 ruling, but the concurring opinion from Justice Thomas and Justice Amy Coney Barrett were actually really interesting, because they made this point that we can't just blindly trust the so-called experts or the self-appointed experts. And if you look at the dissenting opinion from the 3 Democrat-appointed justices, they actually argue the opposite, that we should just blindly trust the experts. And so, you know, we saw it with COVID. We saw it with Joe Biden's cognitive decline. The experts are saying he's completely fine. And now we're seeing it with transgenderism. And that's where I think the divide really exists, is on the one side, you have people who are willing to just blindly trust anyone who says they're an expert on the issue. But then on the other side, you have people who are much more critical of that. And so when you really get down to it, that's where I think the divide is. But you know, much like the court's ruling was 6-3, you know, the American public now, a vast majority of the public is on what I like to call team sanity or team common sense, where they understand the lies of transgenderism and how harmful it is to kids.
Yeah. Speaking of team common sense, someone who's not on that team is Chief Massachusetts, and that, of course, is Elizabeth Warren. Her response, along with many other Democratic responses, were, well, I guess in one breath surprising, and I guess in another not surprising at all, because they think this is one of those 95-5 issues that they're going to be on the 5% side and win somehow still. She says this in her response: trans kids suffer when they don't get medically necessary care. This is a brazen political decision by the Supreme Court. My heart is with trans kids and their loved ones. I won't stop fighting to make sure they can be exactly who they are. I have no idea what that last part of it means, but the first part, medically necessary care, what's medically necessary about chopping your something off? I don't. What is with this response?
Yeah, it's precisely the opposite of medically necessary. And unfortunately, once again, this is just the divide that we're seeing in the country, where one side has deluded themselves into thinking that prescribing cross-sex hormones or chemical castration drugs that they give to sex offenders, or surgeries for minors that are completely medically unnecessary are somehow life-saving. Even though you have people who are in the gender transition industry who are coming out and saying how manipulative and exploitative it is, the fact that you still have people like Elizabeth Warren coming out and saying these things, I mean, it just shows how much they exist in an information silo where all they're hearing from is that 5 to 10% of the population that are the most radical on this issue. Meanwhile, a vast majority of the country, super majority in most cases, depending on the question and how you ask it, are opposed to her stance.
Yeah. Just quickly before I let you go, anything else you want to talk about? What's going on at AMAC Newswire? What are you guys working on? Stories coming up? What's going on over there?
Yeah. So we've been covering everything from the LA riots to the Supreme Court case. A lot of the stories that the corporate media isn't covering, like you guys do here at Real America's Voice. So over at amac.us/newsline, we've got news stories up every day, interviews, breaking news, all of it. So definitely check us out.
Very good. Shane Harris over at AMAC Newswire. And, of course, you can just go to amac.us/Studio6B if you want to sign up, become a member of AMAC Nation there. And AMAC, the great people, by the way, and they have great stuff. And they're working on, things that you care about. And your money is going to fund things that you believe in, which is a nice change from the other people. So amac.us/Studio6B, amac.us/Studio6B. Shane, always appreciate a few moments. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.
All right, Shane Harris from AMAC Newsline. Check them out. And, of course, go to amac.us/Studio6B. Let's